Okay, so welcome everyone to the week's one session of our class on thinking collaboratively. So on this first slide, there are just some instructions for how you should go about adjusting your audio and video settings, as well as some instructions for setting up the BB Ultra panels, because BB Ultra doesn't remember your settings from time to time. So if you haven't done so yet, go ahead and pause the video and do that now, and we will see you when you get back. Okay, so as I said, this is week number 1. This is January 13th through 19th of 2019. Welcome to class. And this session's not live, so hello to all you virtual listeners, and thank you so much for joining me. Today's session, we're going to really focus on collaborative and critical thinking. Before we really jump in, please take the time now to close the door and to put your phone away and on silent. And then just remove any potential distractions for the duration of the session. And I want you to also go ahead and just take a deep breath just to reset before we begin. Last thing before we get going, at the beginning of each session, we'll run a quick quality check just to make sure that the session is running properly. This session isn't live, so I'll go ahead and run the quality check myself. That includes a recording check. You just want to make sure that you can see the little camcorder in the upper left-hand corner of the screen with a little red dot, and that just makes sure that the session is being recorded. The visual check, that means you can see quality check across the top, which I can, as well as the full frame all the way around the border of the slide. And the audio check, just want to make sure that you can hear everything I'm saying clearly and accurately. So if you ever cannot, just go to your settings and adjust the levels of the microphone volume, okay? So our textbook for this class is Thinking Collaboratively by Randy Garrison. This week we're going to be focusing on the content that is found in the preface, chapter 1, and chapter 2, okay? So, learning objectives. These learning objectives are just really what I would like for you to understand by the end of this session. Then I want you to be able to explain what collaborative thinking and critical thinking are, as well as what differentiates them. I want you to be able to explain confirmation bias and how it can affect your perception of information and the world around you. And finally, I want you to be able to use your knowledge of collaborative thinking, critical thinking, and confirmation bias to really evaluate or reevaluate your approach to determining what is valid information and valid sources. Okay? Swell. So one challenge that we face in today's world is the prevalence or the overload even of information that's readily accessible. So as a result, it is so important that we're able, as citizens of this digital community, to assess information for its relevance and its credibility, I apologize. So these big questions are just a couple things I want you to keep in mind as we go through this session. So how do you determine what is relevant, and how do you decide what is credible? And we will just come back to these at the end of class. All right, so to get us started, our first activity is an introduction icebreaker. And because you are all virtual listeners, I would like for you to answer the prompts on your discussion board sometime after the session. For now, you can either pause and jot a few notes, or you can just come back to this slide later. But I would like for you to give your name, a little bit of info about you, and an example of how you use collaboration in your life. And I will go first. My name is Katie Stevens, and I work at the Wright State University Boonshoft School of Medicine as an academic technology analyst, and that really means that I work with educational technology in and out of the classroom. In my spare time, I like to bake and swing dance and read and drink tea, and I use collaboration every day when I'm working with our staff, with our faculty, with our students, just to come up with solutions with technology needs for whatever it is that they need it for. So, all right, so what exactly is collaborative thinking? Collaborative thinking is a shared process through which individuals explore thoughts and ideas both independently as well as a group. And collaborative thinking really recognizes the importance of both of these processes and also how group collaboration can really stimulate or challenge the thinking of the individuals that are involved within that group. So groupthink. Groupthink is, it's really what happens when you have a collaborative environment that isn't so collaborative. It happens when there are a few dominant individuals that kind of overtake the thinking of the group. And what happens is that minority, those thoughts of the minority are presented as the thoughts of the group. And in order to avoid groupthink, it's important to consciously keep collaborative environments open to contributions and open-minded, and it's also important to keep them constructive, because if individuals don't think that they have, that the environment is open to their ideas, they won't feel the need to contribute, and that's the whole point of thinking collaboratively, is to incorporate the ideas of everyone and differing perspectives. Which will then take us to our next topic, which is critical thinking. So critical thinking it really gives individuals the chance to be exposed to in a constructive environment to differing views. This really helps individuals form a big picture to which they can place their own views within. So it uses constructive criticism to break down your own ideas as an individual. And that gives those ideas some context. All right, so for this activity, I'm just asking you to do exactly what this says. I want you to pull out a blank sheet of paper, and I want you to draw the steps you would usually use to make toast. You can go ahead and pause the recording while you do this. It may take a few minutes, but go ahead, draw it out, and meet us back here whenever you get done. All right. All right, welcome back. I'm now going to have you watch a video. It's a little long. It's a little over 9 minutes, but I think it's worth watching the entire thing. So I'm going to go ahead and put the link in the chat. Okay, there you go. Go ahead and follow that, watch the video, and I will see you back here in about 9 minutes. Okay, so welcome back. So what I want to talk about now is kind of how critical thinking was used in the example that our speaker in the video talked about. So participants in his group really used critical thinking to come together to create a more thorough, complex, and inclusive diagram. They started out by giving their individual, they started out by putting down their own thoughts on how you make toast, and what they were asked to do was come together as a group to create one diagram that represents everybody. And so what that did was it gave participants some exposure to processes that were not familiar to them. He mentioned that European people will make toast using a pan, whereas United States individuals will make toast in a toaster. And it's important that people recognize that just because they're different doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just opens your perspective to differing ideas, new ways of doing things. Additionally, he mentioned that when they came together at the end to create the group diagram, it wasn't about coming up with one process. It was about coming up with a diagram that included multiple processes. And the goal here wasn't to find a consensus. It was to create mutual understanding. And by doing that, it gives individuals a chance to see other ideas, other processes, other opportunities. So if they burn their toast and they see that somebody else cooks their toast for 2 minutes shorter, maybe they'll try that next time. And it gives them a chance to kind of realign what they think, what they do, and potentially improve. All right, so let's talk about confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is the tendency that we all have to seek out information that fits what we already think is true, and as a result, we reject information that doesn't fit what we think, what we believe. And this can be a huge problem in a learning environment because it really skews what information we choose to take into consideration. So I'm going to have you go ahead and try this in action. The next activity is called Wasson's 2-4-6 task. And so there's a set of numbers, 2, 4, and 6, and that is a predetermined pattern. So I want you to write down what you think that pattern might be, and then I want you to write another set of numbers that follows that rule. Then I want you to follow the link I'm about to put into the chat, and it'll take you to an interactive version of this game, this puzzle, from the New York Times. And what I want you to do is see how long it takes you to figure out what that pattern is. And I would like to just give you a quick hint. So to get the answer, you're going to need to make guesses that don't follow what the rule you believe is the answer, okay? So I will see you back here in a few. All right, welcome back. So in the task you just completed, you had to consider sequences that you didn't think were right in order to understand what was correct. And it's the same way with information. In order to find out what is true, you have to consider more than one perspective so that you can get a big picture look at how information fits together. And that's necessary for an informed opinion. We have a very strong tendency, like I said, because of confirmation bias, to ignore what we think is wrong, and then we don't pay attention to it. When in reality, if we paid attention to it, even if it does end up not being what we believe, at least we have the information to support why we just don't believe it, or information that perhaps will support why we believe what we do. Okay? All right, so coming back to the big questions, and I've actually added one here. So how do you determine what's relevant? How do you decide what is credible? And here's this one: how can we use collaborative ethical thinking to assist with these determinations of credibility and relevance? I want you guys to go ahead and include an answer to this last question on your discussion board. Just so that I can kind of gauge what you guys are thinking. It really gets at the heart of why it's important. So when you go to do your discussion board post, please include your thoughts on that. There are no right or wrong answers here. These are big questions. They're questions that don't necessarily have right and wrong answers. But just give it some thought and see what you think. All right. So in summary, collaborative thinking creates dynamic, inquiry-based opportunities to embrace critical thinking. Remember, critical thinking is that constructive collaboration environment, which gives individuals a chance to reevaluate their understandings, perspectives, and biases. And hopefully that has become clear through the different activities and such I've had you guys work on. That's all I have for you. So if you have any questions, please feel free to include them on your discussion board. I look forward to reading what you guys have to say, and look forward to seeing what questions you have and seeing what kind of discussions that those questions can inspire as well. So here are my references. And just thank you guys for joining me for this session. It's been a lot of fun to put together, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it as well. Thank you so much, and have a nice afternoon. Take care.